Alright, 2022, probably the most crazy year of my life. I can't even like imagine half of the things that I did this year that I would have ever been able to do, especially let alone all in one year. It was like a pretty crazy 365 days. So I thought I'd make a quick video just kind of like highlighting some of the biggest like accomplishments, some of the biggest races and some of like the biggest and coolest things that I got to do in 2022, because it is always really good to actually look back and see what you've done. Sometimes I get really caught up in like what I've got to do and what I want to do and all the stuff, and kind of forget all the amazing things that we have done, especially in 2022. So I'm going to do a bit of a quick fire of what we did in 2022. Right, so my year started, as every year has for the last 4 years, filming the New Zealand Cycle Classic, which is like the UCI stage race in New Zealand. We only have one of them. Tour of Southland is like probably the biggest race in New Zealand, but it's not a UCI registered race, and I don't have the rights to film that or anything. So CyclingTom Media, one of my other businesses, gets the rights to film 5 different episodes for all the 5 different stages and upload them to this YouTube channel every year. So that's kind of where it all started. And then me and Tristan flew from Wellington to Dunedin to attempt to ride up the world's steepest street, Baldwin Street in Dunedin, which I surprisingly just got up considering how unfit I was. I then left Tristan and flew from Dunedin to Nelson, meet up with Ari and Keegan and do a bit of a small training camp where I met up with Finn Fisher Black and we filmed a video doing some descent trips, and he took me out on a ride where he absolutely killed me out the back of Nelson and took me to some lake and back. I then got home and realised I had a little bit of fitness behind me, so I started training for the age group nationals in Hokitika. I was really pushing for the time trial, so I spent about 3 or 4 weeks just honing in on my TT position. I think I made 5 or 6 videos along the lines of just trying to get as fast and as aero as possible. During this time I came up with the idea to start the CyclingTom development squad. I brought 9 Pinarello road and time trial bikes, which I had spread out between all the boys on the squad. I got a whole bunch of CVs and everything that I had to go through, and then about a week later I chose the squad and told them I'd be flying them up for a camp within a few weeks. The week after that, Windspace sent me my first ever disc road bike, the Windspace T1500, just for me personally to use when I was heading to America to do all the crits. They wanted me to have a go on that, and I absolutely loved it, and it's such a sick looking bike. I then flew down to Hokitika, which is on the west coast of the South Island in New Zealand, to compete at the age group nationals. I did the TT and the road race. One of the first events I'd actually done back since I decided to come fit after taking about 18 months off the bike and hadn't really raced for 2 years. This event was a huge step in the right direction of my head and just really where I wanted to go and where I wanted to take my life. So I would always look at this with fond memories. The weekend after I got back from Nationals, I held the first ever CyclingTom development squad team camp out of Marston. They got to come and see the shop, go and ride the Queen stage. They got to test out their new Pinarello bikes, get the new kit and everything. It was a pretty sick weekend, and then we finished it off with a team time trial race just before they all flew home. A couple weeks after this, with a bit of training in my legs, I decided to do the Cheltenham Classic, where I just rolled up after a pretty big week of training and somehow managed to win my first road race since I was a junior. Completely out of the blue, but it was a good feeling right before I was about to head to America. And then in the second week of May, I jumped on a plane from Marston to LA and then LA to Boston, where I arrived in America for the first time, and this is also one of the first times I'd ever been out of the country and the first time I'd ever been out of the country by myself. I then got situated in Boston, where I'd be staying for the next month and a half, where I met Eduardo and Liam from the Butcherbox team, which was introduced to me by Stephen Jetty, who I'd been talking to and was meant to be on his team in 2020 before COVID. After really getting along well with Eduardo and Liam, who were also in Boston, Butcherbox, the team in America, took me under their wing and started to take me to all these races. They took me with them to New Jersey and Washington to do a whole load of crit in these states, and then I also went with Liam and Jetty to go to the Tour of America Dairylands in Milwaukee as well. One of my big highlights for America is seeing one of my childhood best friends, George Jackson, win the oldest race in America, the Tour of Somerville. He won this in an absolute crazy fashion, and it's just amazing that I got to be there on the road and in the race with him and get to see him cross the line and win that race. In Milwaukee, I competed in 11 days of crit racing called the Tour of America Dairylands. A huge eye-opener to me for the level of racing and criterium racing in America and what there is to come, and if I want to do more, the level that I really need to get to be able to compete at that high level. After I flew back from Milwaukee, I spent a couple of weeks in Boston, where I got to go and see the Red Sox a few times and go and really be a little bit of a tourist rather than a cyclist for a few weeks before I flew off to Spain. When I got to Spain, unfortunately, I got there, I was absolutely exhausted and I lost my bike. I had no service, no way of contacting the boys, and I had to get from Barcelona all the way up to Salt. Finn and Ari called me and told me relatively what train I had to get on. This is the first time I'd ever been in a country that didn't speak English. I got a ticket and I almost fell asleep on the train, and when I got off I finally found them. But once I did get there and I finally got my bike, Spain is one of the most amazing places to ride a bike in the world, and there's a reason that all of the pros live there. Another massive highlight while I was in Spain, I also got to kind of DS and mechanic for the day for the boys on their Smart Dry team. Film and witness Keegan winning his first race in Spain, which is pretty sick. I then jumped back on another plane and flew from Spain to Belgium, where I was meeting up with the guys from Cycling Hub, and I was also going to compete in my first ever Belgium Kermesse. Belgium was probably one of my favourite places that I went, especially for my riding type. The type of riding I like, a little bit rolly, mostly flat. It was such a sick place to ride. The people there are really amazing, the races are awesome, and the Kermesse that I did was really good, but unfortunately I didn't get to finish because my rear wheel started coming out. I then went across the other side of Belgium and stayed with the guys from Cycling Hub. They showed me the delicacy of a Belgian beer, and then we rode home, and then the next day it was about 42 degrees and I decided to go out and do a 5-hour ride, where I ended up getting heat stroke, vomiting all over myself, and ending up in a Belgium hospital. This did put a little bit of a dampener on the trip, but because I was meant to be going to the UK the next day and I missed my flight, but I ended up staying another week in Belgium and getting to film a whole lot of videos with Black Spoke and watching them race a pro Kermesse as well, which was really cool and kind of made up for the disappointment of not getting to the UK. I then had to get on a train from the small town I was staying in Belgium and then go to the capital of Belgium, jump on another train, and then take that train all the way to Germany, where I stayed the night before I did my long haul flight from Germany back to America. I went to LA, and then LA, the long flight from LA to Auckland in New Zealand. And then when I got back to New Zealand, it was all eyes on Tourist Southland and the Couplands Bakeries Booth Group cycling team that I ride for. I was training pretty heavily for that. I really wanted to finish it this year, because 2 years ago I crashed out. I signed a pretty serious deal with Windspace and Windspace New Zealand for the team, getting the entire team on team bikes, team wheels, bars and everything, which is a pretty big deal for a small New Zealand domestic team. And then a couple weeks later, I took my Devo boys down to Invercargill for the Junior Tourist Southland, where we had some great results, and Oliver Scott won 2 stages in the under 17 ranks, which was absolutely phenomenal. From Invercargill, we sent all the boys on planes home, and then me and Toby drove the team car from Invercargill to Queenstown, where we met up with all the other guys from the team for Southland, and we did our first ever inaugural team camp in Queenstown, which was an absolutely crazy place and an amazing place to go and do a team camp. I think I racked up the most meters I've ever climbed in a week in that week, because there's just nothing but hills in Queenstown, but it was an absolutely amazing week and I'd love to do it again next year. And then from team camp I went home for a week and a half before flying back down for Invercargill for the Tour of Southland. The biggest race of the year, and definitely the biggest race of my year. I've been thinking and dreaming about finishing Southland and actually being able to compete down there for like the last 3 or 4 years. 2020 I gave it an attempt, I made it 3 stages in it and then crashed out. So coming into this Southland I had something to prove, and I really wanted to make sure I was worth my while with it. I fought through stage after stage. The first stage I had some terrible cramps, which we finally got under control for the rest of them, and then I fought right to the end, and I made it to the TT, where I had a really good TT, getting a top 50 I believe in the time trial, which for me at that level was pretty good, and I did some great power. So I was coming right by the end, and then I finally got to ride around Queen's Park the last few times with a big group of boys that had all just completed Southland, and it was an amazing feeling. And it's something I worked really hard for and I will never forget. So after Southland I'd had a pretty big year on the road bike. I'd probably ridden it for the last 9 to 10 months. So I kind of decided to hang up the road bike wheels for a while, and I bought myself my first ever mountain bike, which is the Trek Fuel EX7, the 2023 version. First time owning a proper mountain bike, and first time actually like ripping trails and trying to do jumps and stuff. And it's been a pretty awesome experience since then. And I also got to sponsor my first ever mountain bike park, the local Lansdowne mountain bike park, and I even have a track named after me, which is pretty sick. So yeah, it's pretty safe to say that 2022 was an absolutely ginormous year for me. Like, I've done some pretty crazy things. I've spent a lot of money, traveling, doing races, the development squad, the cycling team, and none of this could have been possible without obviously the CyclingTom bike shop, the business I started maybe, I think it's 18-19 months ago now, to do as well as it's done. And I never expected you guys to, and like the local community and the Wairapis to get behind me. And I really have enjoyed putting that money back into the sport that I love, and I'm going to continue doing that for as long as I possibly can. But yeah, that's kind of a summary of 2022. There's obviously a lot of stuff that I've missed, but that's kind of like my highlights and some of the things that I think were big accomplishments and some really cool things that I did in the last year. But obviously going into 2023, we're going to obviously strive for more. We're going to strive for better videos. We're going to strive for more views. We're starting off pretty strong. We've got New Zealand Cycle Classic coming up again, but this is the first time that it's going to be an international race in the last 2 years because of COVID. So we've got a whole, I think we've got a German team, a couple Australian teams, a couple teams from Asia. So it's going to be a big race, and it's all going to be coverage on CyclingTom on YouTube, which is sick. But yeah, if you guys have any highlights of your own, put them in the comments, or if you have any ideas for some goals and maybe some races that I could do, and I mean anywhere in the world for 2023, put them down in the comments. I have been thinking about doing maybe one of those big gravel races in America. I think that would be really cool. Go over there, maybe like Unbound or something. I really want to do the Rift, but I think they're out of entries already. But yeah, something like that, maybe like a Belgian waffle or something in Colorado. But yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video. Obviously, I think we gained 4,000 new subscribers this year, so welcome to all the new people. But a lot of the 19,000 subscribers on this channel have been here for years and years and years. I've been doing this maybe 5-ish years consistently now, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. So let's bring on 2023.